the moment when I was 12 years old and I saw a TV program called Tomorrow's World, and they did an athletics special. And I saw scientists in white lab coats working with athletes at Loughborough University. And I thought that is for me. That is a way that I can combine my love of sport with my academic brain and hopefully be involved at a level of sport that's beyond what as an athlete I would be capable of. That obviously that moment has been one of the big forging moments of my life and my career, which, you know, I was fortunate to have. Not many people have that kind of clear spark in seeing them. So I'm kind of very grateful for that moment.
Yeah, I was gonna, because it's interesting in doing this podcast, it's actually more rare than it is the norm that people sort of just kind of say, that's what I want to do. I find there's a lot of sort of circuitous routes that people take, and it's kind of neat to see somebody who just knew that. I often ask this question to women who've been in the industry as long as you have, because now there's a lot more people like yourself who are doing these roles that women can look up to and go, you know, oh, that's what I would like to do. And in your day, that wasn't the reality as much. So what informed you back then that you could actually aspire to do what you've gone on to do? Who inspired you, or how did you feel this is actually attainable when there wasn't that many people to look at, so to speak?
Yeah, I think going back to my upbringing of being, you know, being brought up as a football fan, going to football, it was never even a discussion or a question in our household that a girl wouldn't have a place in sport. And so I think I was almost naive to that wider societal question. I had always played it. And then I went to university, and again, Loughborough, a sports science program is predominantly males, but that was very quickly for me becoming the environment I was more used to. And then it was going into the environment and realizing, oh, I'm the first female to do this role or do an internship, or, you know, in other sports, having to find places to get changed or things like that. It was actually only later with experience that I realized that it perhaps wasn't the norm, but also that we had a lot to do in terms of helping other females or minorities see that they can do it.
So does the internship then sort of cascade into you working for Chelsea, or does that come later? Like how does all that sort of turn of events occur for you?
Yes, so that was at the end of my internship. They offered me a full-time role, which I was obviously over the moon to be able to accept. And we know that the sports science industry is so competitive. Even that was a number of years ago now. Even now it's even more difficult. But so I was able to get my foot in the door then. And at that point, yeah, I stayed with Chelsea for five and a half years, highs and lows. Particularly that first year, my internship was under Carlo Ancelotti, who's a very experienced, successful head coach manager. But he was so, and still is, so open-minded to sports science. You know, this is back in 2009, 2010, when GPS was relatively new and testing was new. And so you had an experienced coach who was open to innovation and what we were trying to do. And we actually won the domestic double. So we won the league and the cup that year. So I always think my career almost peaked in my internship, because what a fantastic first year. But lo and behold, obviously, I then did experience some of the challenges that come with sport and changes in staff and players and coaches, and change with my own role in terms of whether the head coach bought into sports science philosophy or not. So over that time, I did also spend some time working in the academy, which was, again, a fantastic experience then to see, okay, well, how do we blend wanting to win with developing youngsters? And so I was, again, that kind of experience that on the face of it at the time was quite difficult to go through, staff losing their jobs and my own role being changed. But looking back now, being grateful for the different experiences that I had. The blend of technical skills and knowledge with interpersonal skills. The best practitioners I've worked with have that. They aren't just solely about knowledge in their relevant field, but don't have the personal skills to build relationships, to implement it. And likewise, they're not necessarily people who are just all about the relationships and don't have the knowledge. I think as scientists, you can never complete science, right? You can never finish science, much to our frustration at times. So it's that intellectual curiosity to keep learning and growing, blended with the humility, I think, is a big thing, interest in others, and the ability to build those relationships that then allow you to have a conversation about tracking or testing or nutrition. And I think often people who struggle with it try and dive into the technical conversation too soon, perhaps, or too deep. And actually, if my travels and different experiences taught me anything, it's that you have to build those relationships first, right? That saying of no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care, right? I'm sure people have said that on your podcast before. I think that's what I would identify as in successful practitioners.
Every sport has its culture and its own way of expressing itself. And you grow up in British football, which certainly has a very specific culture. And I know the culture of hockey. So you're walking into a professional hockey dressing room. It's a different animal. So how do you prepare yourself for that walk in and the experience that you undertake to sort of plant your flag in that space?
Yes, yeah, you definitely would know a lot more about the hockey culture than I did in those days. I think, again, I have to give credit to my naivety. I didn't know much at all about the culture. I was very open that I didn't know it. I didn't want to go in and pretend that I knew all about hockey. I was very open and honest with people to say, I don't know anything about this sport, but I'm here to learn.
What was a really steep learning curve in the beginning for you that you hadn't anticipated?
The naivety of it's difficult when you change jobs, any job. Whenever you start a new job, you got to learn people's names, personalities. And I think the combination of changing jobs, changing countries, and changing sport was, in those first few months, quite overwhelming. You're not just trying to learn about the sport of ice hockey and the players that you're working with and the coaches that you're now colleagues with, but you're also trying to set up a bank account and decide where to live and get a social security number, even though you have no idea what a social security number is, and learn to drive on the other side of the road and do a theory test. And I think that combination of like personal challenges in terms of changing country, on top of the already challenging situation of a new job and a new sport, I was probably for the best, but I was definitely underprepared for that whole mixture of challenges.
What or who did you lean on to know you were okay?
Well, I think although, as I mentioned, they brought in a lot of staff, which didn't always help. It did help having other people going through the same thing as you. So having foreigners who were also trying to do all of that. I was one of the last in. So thankfully there were colleagues around me who were like, okay, go and see this person at the bank, and here's a car dealer. And, so we had that community of people. But I think anyone that is going into, that situation that maybe doesn't have those peers around them should definitely reach out to other people who have changed countries or changed sports, because just for that advice as to what to do, and appreciating just how overwhelming it can be. My first experience was, the day before the first training session, where they're doing the conditioning test, and you have 90 athletes lined up, and you have those guys who are literally 3 times the size of me down one end, and then you have the opposite end, you have these guys who maybe could be Olympic level sprinters in a different life.
Mm.
And then you have everyone, all different shapes and sizes in between, including the specialists whose job is either just to snap the ball or kick the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, one, being overwhelmed, but two, thinking, what a fantastic sports science puzzle to have this diversity of athlete that you have to train, recover, strengthen, all towards that common goal that we were talking about before as a sport, and all from very different cultures and backgrounds. How does anyone do this? I would always recommend to people now, if they can. Not everyone can, not everyone has the opportunity or the means to do so, but spending time abroad and living abroad made me much more open to complexity and culture throughout the world. And therefore made me, even just as a person, not as a practitioner, but as a person, more empathetic and understanding of people, which I think is something we could do with more in this society we live in today. Big political issues, not that I'm massively into politics, but I now understand how everyone's upbringing shapes their worldview, and their experiences shape their worldview. And I think, had I never left Crawley or Chelsea, and I had a very limited worldview in that setting. But now I understand how it doesn't mean I agree with everyone. I still have my own beliefs and my own biases, but I understand how people have come to believe in what they have or act in the way they have. And just makes me much more appreciative and respectful that people's perspectives are shaped by what they've experienced. And I don't just mean gender. I mean, obviously for me, having mixed sexes on staff, I think is important, but also you need to have a range of backgrounds, because different athletes are going to connect with different individuals. I think that's what it comes down to, is like, some players loved talking to me about the Premier League or about royalty or drinking tea. Other players have grown up with a number of sisters and therefore like spending time chatting to the female members of staff. Others will connect with other members of staff more than me. And I think if you put that, have diversity within your staff group, you are providing more outlets for people to rely on, or people to find support through. So I decided to move back to the UK and set myself up as a sports science consultant. And just like we were saying with Chelsea, not many people choose to leave the Bills, especially when they're on the trajectory that hopefully they are now. But I felt like I'd achieved what I'd gone out there to do as a practitioner. And I was ready for a new challenge, which now is pivoting to trying to have a wider impact on sports science.
I left the Canadians in 2009 of my own volition, went into Olympic sport, and now do a lot of my own sort of consulting on the side and stuff. It's interesting because a lot of times people kind of don't, they look at you kind of like, well, you worked for the Montreal Canadiens, why would you have left that job? Like, it's kind of like you should still be there, no? Or so do you get that kind of reaction a lot? Like, how come you left there, with almost a kind of acquisitive misunderstanding of the why and what for?
Yeah, definitely. I think even when I was telling people that I was leaving, they were like, but we're good now, why would you leave now? And I'm like, well, because my career is not just tied into this badge or the success. For me, it's about what I want to achieve and the wider impact, as I said.
What is kind of your mission now? And you mentioned trying to sort of make a bigger dent in the world of sports science and things, but what do you get excited to do now, or what are you looking forward to doing in the next part of your career?
Yeah, again, all about forging those new and different paths. So I'm working with a whole range of teams and organizations. Like, I have an amazing variety from English soccer, an MLB team, a US college, and then also some sports data and tech startups. And so, I could not have this variety if I was still in that full-time situation. So I'm really enjoying that mixture of people and settings to work with. But then I'm also trying to create, content that can help educate the masses as well. Much like I'm, sure, your motivations behind this podcast is to try to educate and reach more people. So, I write on my blog. I've just started a YouTube channel because I think that could be a great vehicle for education and discussion. And so that is what is now driving what I'm trying to do.